we're dealing with, data, especially, like with special education, working in that area. Data is very important, and data is important, period. When we're in the classroom, having data pretty much drives everything that we do as educators. Okay. So we're looking at data-driven instruction as opposed to being data informed. Is there a difference? Okay. Many of us will be, we'll be like, well, I don't know. Is there a difference? Okay. So we're going to talk about what is data-driven instruction. Okay. So data-driven instruction is using information gathered from learning results to determine what comes next in instruction. Whether we need to build foundational skills with a student, we need to continue on grade level, or we need to extend, like provide some extensions for a student. Okay, so that is a part of data-driven instruction. Now, data can be in formative assessment as well as summative assessment. Now, with formative assessment, the information is gathered as teaching is taking place, while summative assessment is done at the end of a learning period, maybe at the end of a semester, maybe at the end of a 9-week period. Okay. Now, when this information is gathered, it helps in effective teaching. So data helps with effective teaching. The data is gathered, the data is analyzed, and then the educator is going to look for patterns. What patterns do they see in the learning process, in the success of students, as well as the needs or support of that student? Now, this data, it can be collected and it is used for planning. Okay, so it's used for planning, whether it's your planning of your lesson or planning for whatever interventions might need to be made for the student. The information is that you get from the data. You can decide on what skills or knowledge you need for the student to understand. You can also narrow down on the focus areas or concepts that a student might need. Okay. Now, high quality data is produced when there is also high quality assessment. So you want to have the assessment that is, whatever you're teaching, you want to make sure that you're assessing what you're teaching and not trying to assess something that you're not teaching your student. Now, as far as students who have exceptional needs, there are accommodations that are put in place for that student whenever they're being assessed. Okay. Now, as far as data-informed instruction. Okay, so we're going to see, is there a difference between the driven instruction as opposed to informed instruction? Okay, so the data-informed instruction, it's the practice of using a variety of forms or levels of data to improve the student learning. So classroom practices and okay, so it's not just the numbers that we're looking for as far as data-informed instruction. We're looking for the numbers, true enough, but we're also looking at the overall well-being of the student. Okay, so for example, you might have a student who's always getting A's or B's, but then the student suddenly starts to get F. Why is that happening? What is going on? Are we looking at the well-being, the overall well-being of that student? So being data informed, it includes having information on assessments, the results of the assessments, but it also has to do with the students' social, emotional, behavioral, as well as cultural experiences. So we're going beyond just the numbers when we're talking about data informed instruction. Okay. Now, with data informed instruction or practices, we're looking at the student's achievement, their achievement scores or their number scores. We're also looking at their social emotional learning and their development. And we're also looking at their family, what's going on with family. We're looking at the family as well as at the community. Okay. Now, in terms of data, it's important to remember that a key purpose of data, information that we get, is to improve the teaching learning process. So we're not just collecting it because we're looking at numbers or we're looking at scores. Our goal in collecting data is to make sure that we have that information to improve on the teaching learning process. Okay, now in order for us to collect that useful data, we need to have a clearly identified purpose. Why are we collecting this data? We need to have that. We also need to make sure that we have proper assessment tools that we're using to assess these, for these assessments, so that we can have accurate data. Okay. Now, when there are certain steps that we take when we're collecting the data. We take the data for data informed practices. We're going to get the data. We're going to plan. We're going to teach. We're going to assess. We're going to analyze that data that we get. Then we're going to make whatever adjustments we need to make for the student. And then we're going to plan again. Okay, so it's kind of a cycle that we have when we're doing data informed instruction. So the question is, based on what has been discussed, data, we're looking at numbers. The data driven instruction, we're looking at numbers. But with data informed instructions, we're looking at the well-being of the student. Do we know our students? So you can ask yourself this question. Am I driven? Is my instruction, is it just data driven, or is it data informed? Okay.